I've always been fascinated by the invisible forces that shape our global economy. And today, we're diving into one of the most controversial, tariffs. You've probably heard this word thrown around in news headlines. But what exactly are tariffs? Simply put, they're taxes on imported goods. But their impact? Well, that's anything but simple. These seemingly innocuous fees have the power to alter the course of entire industries, spark international tensions, and even change the products you see on your local store shelves. Now, you might be wondering, why do countries impose tariffs in the first place? Well, it's all about protection and revenue. Governments use tariffs to shield domestic industries from foreign competition. By making imported goods more expensive, they give local producers a fighting chance in the market. It's like giving the home team a head start in a race. But tariffs aren't just about playing defense. They're also a significant source of income for many governments. In fact, before income taxes became widespread, tariffs were often the primary way countries filled their coffers. Tariffs aren't some modern invention. They've been around for almost as long as trade itself. Ancient civilizations like Rome and China used them to control trade and fill their treasuries. But it was during the mercantilist era of the 16th to 18th centuries that tariffs really took center stage. Countries became obsessed with exporting more than they imported, and high tariffs were their weapon of choice. This mentality persisted well into the modern era. In fact, the United States, now a champion of free trade, once had some of the highest tariffs in the world. In the late 19th century, average U.S. tariff rates on dutiable imports sometimes exceeded 60%. That's like paying more than half the price of your imported goods just in taxes. Let's take a look at a prime example of how tariffs can backfire spectacularly. The infamous Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. Enacted at the start of the Great Depression, this law raised U.S. tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods to record levels. The goal? To protect American jobs and farmers. The result? An international trade war that many economists believe worsened and prolonged the Depression. Countries around the world retaliated with their own high tariffs, and global trade plummeted. U.S. imports fell from $4.4 billion in 1929 to $1.3 billion in 1932, and exports fell from $5.4 billion to $1.6 billion. That's a drop of about 70%. It was like slamming the brakes on the global economy, and the effects were felt worldwide. After World War II, 23 countries signed the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT, in 1947. GATT evolved over the years, culminating in the creation of the World Trade Organization in 1995. The WTO now has 164 member countries, covering about 98% of world trade. It's like a global referee for trade disputes, working to ensure fair play and reduce trade barriers. But despite these efforts, tariffs are far from extinct. They've just become more strategic and contentious. In 2018, the U.S. began imposing tariffs on Chinese goods, citing unfair trade practices. China retaliated with its own tariffs, and soon we had a full-blown trade war on our hands. At its peak, the U.S. had tariffs on $550 billion worth of Chinese products, while China imposed tariffs on $185 billion of U.S. goods. That's a lot of stuff caught in the crossfire. The impact was felt across industries, from soybeans to smartphones. It's a stark reminder that in our interconnected world, trade disputes can quickly escalate and have far-reaching consequences. The European Union, as a major global trading bloc, also uses tariffs strategically. One area where this is particularly evident is in technology and agriculture. The EU has imposed tariffs on a range of U.S. tech giants, arguing that these companies don't pay their fair share of taxes in Europe. On the agricultural front, the EU maintains high tariffs on certain products to protect its farmers. For example, the tariff on imported beef can be as high as 12.8% plus €3 per kilogram. That's like paying an extra $1.50 for every pound of steak. These policies have led to ongoing tensions with trading partners, particularly the US. Now, let's shift our focus to one of the world's fastest-growing economies, India. India has a long history of protectionist policies, and in recent years, it's been ramping up tariffs on a wide range of products. In 2018, India increased import duties on nearly 50 product groups, from mobile phones to automobiles. The goal of these measures is to boost domestic manufacturing and reduce reliance on imports, particularly from China. It's part of India's Make in India initiative. But this approach has its critics. Some argue that while it may protect certain industries in the short term, it could make Indian companies less competitive globally in the long run.
While protectionist measures can boost domestic industries in the short term, they may hinder innovation and global competitiveness in the long run.
It's a classic example of the trade-offs involved in tariff policies. There's no easy answer, but it's crucial to find the right balance.
Now you might be wondering about the pros and cons of tariffs. Well, they're like many economic tools, a double-edged sword. On one hand, they can protect domestic industries and jobs. A tariff on imported steel, for example, might help keep local steel mills in business. They can also be used as leverage in international negotiations or to address unfair trade practices. But on the flip side, tariffs often lead to higher prices for consumers. That cheap smartphone or affordable car might suddenly not be so cheap anymore. Tariffs can also invite retaliation from other countries, potentially hurting exporters. And in our globalized economy, where products often cross borders multiple times during production, tariffs can disrupt complex supply chains.
Tariffs can be an effective short-term tool for protecting infant industries, but they're not a long-term solution for economic growth.
Without tariffs, we'd be out of jobs. They're essential for maintaining our industrial base.
I understand the need to protect domestic industries, but as someone who relies on imported components, tariffs have significantly increased my costs.
These conflicting viewpoints highlight the complexity of the issue. It's clear that the impact of tariffs varies greatly depending on your perspective and position in the economic landscape. So where do we stand with tariffs today? Well, it's a mixed picture. Global average tariff rates have generally been declining since the mid-20th century, thanks to international trade agreements. According to the World Bank, the worldwide weighted mean tariff rate fell from about 34% in 1996 to just over 2% in 2017. That's a pretty dramatic drop. Now, you might be wondering, how do all these tariffs affect me? Well, if you've ever bought anything, and I'm guessing you have, tariffs have likely influenced the price you paid. Sometimes the effect is obvious, like when the price of imported cheese suddenly jumps. Other times, it's more subtle, affecting the cost of components in products assembled domestically.
As a small business owner, sudden tariff changes can really throw us off balance. We don't have the resources to quickly adapt like larger companies do.
Small businesses often lack the resources to quickly adapt to changes in trade policy, making them particularly vulnerable to sudden tariff increases. Recent studies show that a significant percentage of small businesses have been affected by tariff changes.
Tariffs can protect some industries, but they can also hurt others. It's a complex issue for small businesses like ours.
Interestingly, tariffs are increasingly being considered as a tool for environmental policy. Some argue that tariffs on carbon-intensive imports could help combat climate change and reduce environmental damage. The EU is considering a carbon border adjustment mechanism, essentially a tariff on imports from countries with less stringent environmental regulations.
Environmental tariffs could be a game changer in how we approach global trade and climate policy.
As we look to the future, the role of tariffs is likely to evolve. With the rise of digital trade and services, traditional tariffs on physical goods may become less relevant. However, new forms of trade barriers, like data localization requirements or digital services taxes, are emerging. The challenge for policymakers will be adapting trade rules for this new economic landscape. As we've seen, tariffs are far more than just a tax on trade. They're a powerful tool that shapes our global economy in countless ways. From protecting domestic industries to sparking international conflicts, from raising consumer prices to potentially addressing climate change, tariffs continue to be at the center of economic and political debates worldwide. As our world becomes increasingly interconnected, understanding these invisible taxes on trade is more important than ever. So the next time you hear about tariffs in the news, you'll know there's a whole lot more to the story than just numbers on a customs form.